Hey everybody, this is Charles Morgan from Comic Week. Happy Friday. The weekend's upon us. And I want to take a few minutes, excuse me, to look over a few comics that I think are really good for readers. These aren't, the hot comics that are going to be investment quality. These aren't like the crazy number ones that you're going to have to seek out. These are comics that you more or less should be able to find even today. From this week at your local comic book shop, and comics that I think if you like reading comics that are a little bit absurd, a little bit funny, but just chock full of humor and wit. These are comics that you definitely want to check out. Also, after I go over the 3 picks I have here, actually 4 picks, I have a really great announcement, something that we plan to roll out next week, and I'll tell you more about it in a minute. So the comics that I'm looking at, these aren't, your Houses of X or Spawn 300s or things like that. These are things that are just really great, fun reads, a series you should be on the lookout for, or maybe in one instance, a one-shot that really just jazzed me after I got it. And I want to share them with you. So the first one, and this is a variant cover here, the 75-cent variant, which I think is cool. And I probably don't know if I paid 75 cents. I probably paid full price for it. But this is Space Bandits by Mark Millar. And Matteo Scalera. Now, this is high fantasy space absurdity. This is a tale of double crossing and revenge. It's 3 issues into the series. You can probably still buy the first 2 very easily. But this is a great series. If you haven't checked it out yet, you should check it out. Maybe go to Comixology, get a digital copy, probably be reduced price for the earlier issues. See if you like it. But you basically have double crossing, crime, space capers, 2 women who basically get totally screwed over by their criminal boyfriends, and they're out on a plot for revenge. It's a great story. If you want something that's just completely has callbacks to 1980s pop culture, but set in space in the distant future, this is a great little series. I'm very happy I've invested into this so far. The second comic, which took me completely by surprise, this is not the kind of thing I probably would have set out to buy just looking at the cover of it. A Conan the Barbarian riding a giant pug comic. But here's the thing. This is a very political comic. It's a fantasy ab absurdum type of deal. But there is a very similar to Vladimir Putin style guy in here, with a very similar to Donald Trump style hand puppet named Kofefe, which if you haven't been living under a rock the last few years, you probably know what that refers to. It's brutal, hilarious, could be offensive to people, and I'm surprised it's flown under the radar. This might be the thing if people really get outraged about it or jazzed about it. Could be harder to find right now. I don't think it is. Everybody I've shown this couple-page sequence to have pulled one aside for themselves. So you know what that probably means. Anyway, $4. You don't even have to invest yourself in the rest of the series if you're not interested in it. But for $4, you get to, perhaps speculate that that's going to be something people get outraged about. And it is funny. Battle Pug, giant pug fights a bear. I don't know what else I need to say about it. Beyond these 2 issues, the comic that I read this week that I was the most excited about, and it did not disappoint, one way or another, is this: The Amazing Spider-Man Going Big. If you look at the authors at the top, you have Jerry Conway, Mark Bagley, and Eric Larson. I'm an enormous fan of Eric Larson's work. I think he's a true auteur. Not that Jerry Conway or Mark Bagley isn't, but Eric Larson, I think, is a huge student of comic history. He really understands basically every period of comics. His Savage Dragon is one of my favorite comics, and to see him come back in a very in-jokey way and tell the backstory, the last story of the stories in here, and a very fun, lighthearted story about Spider-Man fighting. Sorry about that. Very lighthearted story about Spider-Man, fighting, werewolves and getting the police to arrest the villain, and then going off to the dinner theater with a very impatient Mary Jane, and then forgetting his movie tickets. It's just a really fun teenage drama with a lot of wit and a lot of care and love. And if you never thought you'd see the day where Eric Larson would come back to do a Spider-Man story again, he even sort of plays on this in the opening page. And so to me, this was like, if you love comics, you just love reading them, this is definitely something you want. I didn't even mention the Ye story, which is really great. It's got a, Coyote, a villain in it, very familiar villain. People read Marvel comics in the Bronze Age, and so this is just great. It's not probably it's not in the main continuity. It's never gonna, probably ain't going to go up in value or anything. But if you want to read something really fun, I had the most fun this week reading, like I said, Eric Larson's story. Another thing that is must read and has been since it's come out is Aubrey Sitterson's No One Left to Fight by Dark Horse Comics. Osio's artwork in this has been fantastic. The color palette is off the wall. It's a great, funny, endearing story, well-written story. Aubrey Sitterson usually writes very good stories. So I've had the good fortune of getting every issue so far. I'm not disappointed. And I'm happy to announce that we will be launching our podcast series. ComicWeek has a podcast. That's our sister site. I've run that podcast. We have well over 110 episodes. We've been doing it for 4 years. We've won a number of awards for that podcast in that industry. We will launch the ComicWeek podcast next week. And our first guest, I'm happy to say, is former Henrico County, which is where I am in Virginia, resident Aubrey Sitterson, author of No One Left to Fight, will be joining me. We were going to conduct our interview on Monday. We already have some topics we're going to cover. We're going to try to go in depth for about 20, 30 minutes to talk about, the art of creation, get in the weeds about things, what makes a good story. Hey, I'll even ask him how wrestling, which is something he's an expert on, is similar to serial comics. So happy to announce this. I hope it meets your satisfaction. We'll try to get more guests, creators, and people in the industry lined up in the future, and that'll do it. So apologize for the glare in the back, but it's the middle of the day, and I had to get this up because I'm so excited. So anyway, for ComicWeek, for me, Hubert, Scott, back in, Chris Jones, and Norman Krumanacher are contributors. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your comics, and we'll see you soon.